The park was unusually quiet that afternoon. The wind carried a faint chill, and the rustling of leaves seemed to echo the weight of unspoken words. On a weathered wooden bench, a young mother sat hunched forward, her face buried in her trembling hands. Her soft sobs broke the calm rhythm of the day, while her little boy, no older than 6, stood beside her, confusion and worry clouding his innocent eyes. He tugged gently at her sleeve and asked in a tender voice, "Mommy, why are you crying?" Before she could find the strength to answer, a stranger sitting a few benches away slowly rose to his feet. He had been watching quietly for several minutes, torn between respect for privacy and the unmistakable pull of compassion. As he approached, his shadow fell softly across the mother and child. And then, with a voice steady yet filled with emotion, he said, "Because sometimes, little man, life feels too heavy for your mommy to carry alone. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the beauty of helping strangers, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us spread stories that heal hearts." Her name was Emma Carter, a single mother living in the small town of Asheville, North Carolina. Life hadn't always been this heavy for her. Once upon a time, she had a husband, a home full of laughter, and a dream that seemed within reach. But dreams have a cruel way of fading when reality presses too hard. When her husband, Mark, left 3 years ago after losing his job and spiraling into despair, Emma's world collapsed overnight. She had a toddler to feed, bills piling up, and no one to turn to. She worked double shifts at a local diner, smiling for customers while her feet ached and her heart broke. Every dollar she earned went toward rent and her son, Noah's needs. Sometimes she skipped meals so he could eat. Sometimes she pretended everything was fine, even when eviction notices arrived in red letters. The hardest part wasn't the exhaustion or the hunger. It was the loneliness. The feeling that she was invisible in a world that kept moving without her. That afternoon in the park, Emma had just received a call from her landlord. Her payment was 3 weeks overdue. She had begged for an extension, but he was firm. By the end of the week, she and Noah would have to leave. She hung up the phone, her heart pounding, and for the first time in months, she broke. The tears she had kept hidden for so long finally poured out. She didn't want Noah to see her cry, but children notice the truth before adults do. Noah's voice cracked the dam of silence around her. "Mommy, why are you crying?" he asked again, his eyes wide with fear and innocence. And before Emma could wipe her face and pretend, the stranger's voice filled the space between them. His name was Daniel Brooks. He was in his mid-30s, a quiet man with kind eyes and a calm presence. He had been coming to that park every day for weeks, sitting alone, watching the world move around him. His own life had been scarred by loss. Just 2 years earlier, Daniel had lost his wife, Sophie, to a sudden illness. They had no children, and since her passing, his home had turned into a shell of memories and silence. He worked from home as a freelance architect, but most days he barely worked at all. The loneliness gnawed at him, though he never said it aloud. When he saw Emma crying, something stirred deep within him, a reminder of all the times he had seen Sophie cry, all the moments he had wanted to fix things but couldn't. He knew that pain. He recognized the exhaustion behind her tears. And so, when Noah asked the question, Daniel couldn't stay silent. Emma looked up, startled, her eyes red and puffy. She felt embarrassed, even a little defensive. But there was something in Daniel's gaze that disarmed her. He wasn't pitying her. He was simply seeing her, truly seeing her, as if her pain was something sacred, not shameful. Daniel sat down on the edge of the bench, leaving a respectful distance. "Sometimes," he said softly, "grown-ups cry because they've been trying to be strong for too long." His words hung in the air like a quiet truth. Noah, still confused, climbed into his mother's lap and hugged her tightly. Emma closed her eyes and let her tears fall freely. For a while, they just sat there, the mother, the child, and the stranger, who somehow felt less like one. The park around them faded into the background, and in that shared silence, something shifted. Daniel eventually offered to buy them a cup of hot chocolate from the cafe nearby. Emma hesitated, but he smiled reassuringly. "It's not charity," he said. "It's just one human helping another." Reluctantly, she agreed. They walked together to the cafe, Noah skipping ahead. Inside, the warm air smelled of cinnamon and coffee beans. They sat by the window, and for the first time in weeks, Emma laughed. A small, fragile laugh, but real. Daniel listened as she shared bits of her story. The struggles of single motherhood, the endless bills, the feeling of failure. He didn't interrupt. He just listened, nodding gently, letting her words spill out like water from a cracked dam. When she finished, there was a pause. Then Daniel said quietly, "You're not failing, Emma. You're surviving. And that's harder than most people realize." She blinked back new tears, not from pain this time, but from gratitude. Nobody had told her that in years. Nobody had called her strong without expecting something in return. As days turned into weeks, Daniel and Emma began to see each other more often, sometimes by chance, sometimes by quiet arrangement. He'd stop by the diner where she worked, always sitting at the same booth, leaving a generous tip but never making her uncomfortable. She'd bring Noah to the park after work, and Daniel would join them, helping the boy build tiny castles in the sandbox. Noah grew fond of him quickly, calling him Mr. Dan. And though Emma tried not to let her heart hope, she couldn't deny the warmth Daniel brought into their lives. He never crossed boundaries, never made promises. He was simply there, steady, kind, and present in a way that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. One rainy evening, Emma came home to find an envelope taped to her apartment door. Inside was a receipt showing her rent had been paid for 3 months in advance. There was no note, no name, just peace. Her hands shook as she looked around, wondering who could have done it. The only person she could think of was Daniel, but she couldn't bring herself to ask him. Instead, the next day at the park, she thanked him indirectly. "Sometimes," she said, watching Noah chase pigeons across the path, "it feels like angels walk among us, just ordinary people doing extraordinary things." Daniel smiled faintly. "Maybe," he said, "but sometimes it's just one heart recognizing another." As autumn turned to winter, their bond deepened quietly. Emma began to smile more. Noah began to laugh louder. And Daniel, for the first time since Sophie's passing, began to live again. Yet despite the growing affection, Daniel never pushed for more. He knew Emma's wounds needed time. He was content being a part of her healing, no matter what form it took. Then one evening, as Christmas lights flickered across the town square, Emma received a letter offering her a stable position at the cafe, full-time with benefits. It meant security, a future for her and Noah. Overwhelmed, she went straight to the park to tell Daniel, but he wasn't there. She returned the next day and the day after that, but the bench was empty. Days passed, and still, no sign of him. Worried, she asked around, eventually learning from a cafe barista that Daniel had been admitted to the hospital after collapsing from a heart condition he'd been quietly battling. She rushed there, her heart pounding, and found him lying pale but smiling weakly as Noah ran into the room. "I didn't want you to worry," he said, his voice faint. "Guess I'm not as strong as I thought." Tears filled her eyes as she held his hand. "You don't have to be," she whispered. "You already gave us everything we needed." Daniel smiled. "No, Emma. You gave me something I'd forgotten existed. Hope." He recovered slowly over the next month, and when he was finally discharged, Emma and Noah were there to bring him home. That day, as they sat once more on their favorite park bench, Noah climbed onto Daniel's lap and asked, "Mr. Dan, are you going to stay with us forever?" Daniel looked at Emma, his eyes soft, searching for her answer. She smiled through tears and said, "I think he already has, sweetheart." From that day on, they weren't just three souls crossing paths by chance. They became a family shaped by compassion and second chances. Months later, as spring returned, the park once again bloomed with life. Emma sat on the same bench watching Noah play and thought back to that moment when everything had begun. With a stranger's voice answering a little boy's question. She realized now that kindness doesn't always come wrapped in perfection or timing. Sometimes it arrives as a tired smile, a shared silence, a gentle hand on your shoulder. It had taken losing everything for her to discover something greater, that love isn't found, it's rebuilt, one act of kindness at a time. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us tell more stories of love, loss, and second chances. Special request. Before you go, comment below. Kindness changes everything. Let's fill the world with hope, one story at a time.